mechanical engineering. In 1975, I started teaching mechanical engineers elective course on appropriate technology. Yeah. And then the students from other branches started joining, and by about 1983, it became, yeah, अच्छा है, पास होने के लिए बहुत अच्छा course है. Everybody, there were 250 students graduating, and from about 84 to 96, I always had 90 plus students in the class. Because in the final year, they had to take one elective other than from their department. So people would take appropriate technology course. Yeah? And most, I don't think they liked the lectures too much, but they used to like the field trip. Yeah? Where we used to go to villages and see technologies. Yeah? Technologies. I can't truthfully say that I'll do justice to everything that I want to say, but let's see how it goes. And it's exactly 5:45. I should stop around 6:45. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. You will see what is technology is written in bold. What is social change is not. Yes. That's because I don't know enough about it. Still sort of, carry the day. Yeah. Okay. And then what is development? I'll say something. I think you all wanted to know what is development. So we'll put some, and I'll do some case studies, and then criteria and methodology for appropriate technology. Yeah. And some conclusions. All right. I was very fond of collecting definitions of technology. Engineers always want to start with definition. You always define efficiency, you define specific fuel consumption. Yeah? All kinds of things. Yeah? You always define something. Entropy, energy, you define. Yeah? Similarly, when I joined this institute and even in my previous institution, not many people, although they all went to institutes of technology, they didn't know what technology was. So I sort of looked at dictionary in my father's time. It was published in 1929. It was called Webster's English Dictionary. Yeah? And I looked at that, what is technology? And it said it's an industrial art. I said, here, India में technology करते हैं, वो लोग PCM करते हैं. Art क्या है? And I couldn't understand, I couldn't put two things together. Yeah? Ever since then, I've been collecting definitions of technology. And I tell you, in the pre-internet days, I had 16 definitions. I'm just projecting a few of them. All right. So here is the first one that modern students know. Modern engineering students, when they come to IIT, if you ask them what is technology, first thing they will say, nobody ever asked us that question. But when they are, they will say it's an application of science. And then you say, which science? So बोलेंगे PCM, natural science. So that begs the question, is social science also required? Yeah, all right. So that's what I have said. I have put a question mark in front of social. Yeah? So application of natural and social science to the study of techniques. Techniques. This is a very nice sort of autonomous thing. Technology is a kind of autonomous thing, away from people, human condition, if you like. And it's just simple application of science, PCM. Yeah. And now there's for B also, right? Biology. All right. But then the computer thing started, and people started defining technology as a combination of hardware and software. Hardware was the machine you had in front, software were the programs that you wrote, and the languages you used, and so on and so forth. In fact, it was always the case. Even in manufacturing, you would have machines that produced, and then you had the management, which which was the software, you see. But nobody ever used that terminology. But now people use it quite extensively, use it software. There's somebody say he has a good hardware but a poor software. Therefore his business failed. Yeah? And people say like that. Alright. So this has a functional institutional connotation. Then the creative learning enterprise, or material technical and social transformation. Technology is creative social enterprise. What it says is, this technology is not like the poem you learned in your second class, standard 2, you will still remember it. The law of thermodynamics you learned in the previous semester, you won't. Work is not a type technology. You have to learn it. You have to learn it by doing it, learn it by, assimilating and applying it and so on and so forth. It's not something that sort of intuitively falls. Yeah? Is that right? So we say, but it's a very creative process therefore, and for material, technical and social transformation. Most engineers think it is only material technical. Yeah? Technology is about milling rice, that's all. You put in a raw rice and you get a polished rice out at the other end. Yeah? That's all people think. It has something to do with society as well, and so on and so forth. This is a reminder. Like a genetic material. This is Amulya often used this. Amulya Reddy, late Amulya Reddy, he often used this, said it is like a genetic material. There are two connotations. One is that, the animals which lived in water, who taught them how to walk? They came on the surface and they started walking because they had the genes of fins and so on, which somehow could be transformed. Transformed is not the one. What's it? What do they call it? Evolve. Yes? Natural evolution. So natural evolution. Yeah. Right? So it's very sort of organically happens. Very organic. It often happens like a genetic. But more importantly, what Amulya would say is that technology carries the code of the society in which it is generated. And when it is transferred from that society to another society, it tries to create the society in which it was generated. Interesting thought, no? Interesting thought. Okay. This is a political science professor in the United States after the World Trade Center was bombed. And he said, technology is a social battlefield or a parliament of things on which civilizational alternatives are debated and decided. It's a power game. Technology is licensed with power and for deciding the destiny of a civilization. You don't know? What is the American people say? To go where no man has been before. That is the punchline. That's the punchline. Okay? Is that correct? Are you familiar with that? American commitment to science and technology is to go where no man has been before. In every field. This is from Indian Express. It had a 2-page supplement on the coming world of robotics and humanoids. argued that physics will lead to physics plus mechanical engineering, of course, will lead to robotics, and biology plus whatever will lead to creation of humanoids. And it will be a world of robots and humanoids. Yes. Neither quite like human beings, but they could do everything that human beings wanted to do. They were very good servants. Yeah. Okay. And but it was a very alarming, negative, if you like, view of technology. It did say technology is the knack of so arranging the world that we do not have to experience it. Apparently the world of humanoids and robotics is not worth experiencing. Okay. And then I like this the best. The last two I like the best. The last but one, I've taken it from a book, strangely, a book written by an economist. And it says knowledge, skills and procedures for making, using and doing things. I like this for two reasons. First is, it says technology is about making, using and doing things. So ING hona chahiye. It's an activity. Yes? Is that correct? Shaving is the technology, not the razor blade. Razor blade is a product. Yeah? Is that right? So shaving is the technology. So main thing is making, using and doing things. Making, using and doing things. So I always say technology of making paper. Yeah? Bond paper is not the technology. It's a product. And from that I sort of made it a bit short. And I said technology is logic of techniques. Like sociology, psychology, biology. What do they say? Hey, logic क्या होता है? Logic is about logic, right? Is that right? So, and logic is about knowledge. Logic is knowledge. Techniques are skills and procedures. Is that right? So, in a very simple way, one can say technology is a logic of techniques. I remember a student once asking, इकोनॉमिक्स में लॉजिक वाला क्या होता है? ऐसे नहीं होता है क्योंकि उसमें लॉजिक ही नहीं है. Isn't that true? Economic science, it has nothing, it ends in logic. Isn't that strange? I make such detours, otherwise it gets a bit boring. Alright, so here it is. So you are here to listen about appropriate technology. So technology has been garlanded with another word called appropriate. So there are so many garlands we put now. Here is one. Here is the first column says computer technology, information technology, machine technology, laser technology, nanotechnology. What are we saying? Association with some science that we know. Yeah? But then there are others like industrial technology, agricultural technology, domestic technology, infrastructure and transport technology. This is peculiar to India, this classification, because it derives from planning commission. Indian economy is expressed in terms of these four sectors. Yeah? Four sectors. Industry, agriculture and so on. And therefore they attach the word technology. And I always ask some economic friends of mine, Mahindra and Mahindra ka tractor kya hai? Is it industrial technology or agriculture? So don't ask such difficult questions. So they know what it is, somehow. They know, and when they are budgeting and so on and so forth, they know where to put it. Yeah, okay, all right. So then what about Western technology, indigenous technology, and traditional technology, modern technology? कितना हम लोग prefix डाला है? Isn't that right? What is missing there? You never speak of Eastern technology. Always Western technology. All it meant was it carries with it certain characteristics of a society that is Western. Economics associated with it, high capital, low labor technologies. And then there is the final one. Public technology, private technology, community technology. There is the family biogas plant. And then there is the community biogas plant. Thank God there is no PSU, no? There is no public biogas plant, right? Is that right? Anything? Association with ownership. Ownership. And some of you are going to Nagaricha जवळ ते कुठलं डॉक्टर भगीरथ डॉक्टर देवदत्त. So you are going to see those biogas plants there. So I'm just saying that. So tell me whether it is a private technology or a community technology or public. At the same time, I can ask myself, why is there no community pedal power technology? Wouldn't it be nice in a village you have one hut in which there is a 3-man, 4-man drive, stationary pedal power pack, common shaft connected to different machines. Yeah? Flour making, masala grinding, oil expelling, rope twisting, all these little gadgets connected to a common shaft. And the man who goes to use them simply engages the relevant machine. And every time you use that machine, you put CTARA 9 towards maintenance. Would that be a community pedal power pack? We are in the business of alternatives. Alternatives often come by changing notions of ownership, or science, or whatever. Or in economics, people speak of change of scales and so on and so forth. Is that right? So, many things are possible. But this is the I just mentioned to you what is working definition of technology. Technology is the logic of techniques, and the logic relates to knowledge and literacy of technology, or techniques relate to skills, procedures, and somehow association with numeracy. Skills and technique have association with numeracy. Knowledge has association with literacy. Are you getting that? Knowledge conveys the overall meaning. What does it do to society? What does it do to the environment? And so on and so forth. Yeah? It need not be put down in numbers, but people understand what it means. Yeah? Okay. So now what about this appropriate technology? The one thing about all these things you will see, if I put between computer and technology a hyphen, it still doesn't change the meaning. It is still computer technology. You understand it? If I said Western technology, if I put a hyphen, it doesn't change the meaning. Okay? Because none of them is an adjective. Qualifiers, but not adjectives. Is that fair enough? Public technology is not an adjective. Public is not an adjective. It simply qualifies, characterizes, right? Appropriate technology, it It's an adjective. Why would people talk about appropriate technology? Simple, because there are inappropriate technologies. Yeah, okay. So you can see it's an adjective. You are taking upon yourself the task of saying good and bad. Some are good, some are bad, some are not so good, so on and so forth. Yeah. So we take a very pragmatic view of it and we say there are always alternatives. Some are more appropriate than others. So we construct a ranking problem. And this is the most difficult part for a traditional engineer who comes out of a college to accept that we are going to put alternatives on a shelf. They may be old, they may be new, they may use computer, it may be Western, it may be public, it may be private, anything, any of the characteristics. We are going to put them all on a shelf, stand away from it, and we are going to say, to start with, if they are all functional, we will say, they are all good, but some are better than others. That is the central task of appropriate. Right? Some are better than others. Yeah? Don't say we don't like something or something. Leave it to others to decide. Yeah? Alright. Then the next task, and the first thing is for an engineer who has just come out of college, is so wedded to the modern technology that he refuses to put it on the shelf, all the known alternatives. Yeah? He finds it demeaning. I'll show you some examples of that. And strangely, when you actually put to that student all the alternatives, he chooses something which has been abandoned as the most appropriate. Okay? Alright, so there are alternatives from which you have to make a choice, right? And so how to rank? Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. How to rank? We say firstly, we need to view technology as a system that functions in society. The moment somebody says technology, you must think he's talking about society. Activities going on in society. Yes? Is that fair enough? And then, thus we rank alternatives from the standpoint of society. Basically, when you are judging the technology and ranking them, you say, if I were a society, which technology would I choose from the spectrum? That is the most difficult one. This is where the quarrel begins with the management people. They also deal with choice of technology. But their starting point, the bottom line is, what is there in it for me? Is that correct? The management student always asks the first question, what is there in it for me? In fact, if he doesn't ask the question, yeah, no, what? पैसे देता से कौन? Invest करता से कौन? No investor will put money in his project unless he convinces him what is there in it for me. Appropriate technology start by asking, if I were a society, what would I choose? Not if I was me. If I was me, I would always choose a Ferrari. But if I was society, what would I choose? That is the central question of appropriate. Alright, and he has spent time on this. I said, I don't know anything about social change. But I can say something about change in societal forms. Change in societal forms. And you can see something on the left here. These are the very old societies in which there were habitats and they interacted directly with nature for sustenance. They will get their food, everything from nature directly. No other agency. No other agency. Interaction directly with nature. From that stage, we have moved on to modern societies, where the society comprises habitats and productive organizations. Slightly before, you can also use service organizations because quite a large percentage of people now are in services. So you can say productive and service organizations and habitats. And all these cooperative societies in which people live and all that together. And it would, for a moment it will appear, like you go to Hiranand and you will see where is nature here. How do people live here? They get everything from a shop. Where does it come from? From nature. Ultimately it comes from nature. Yeah? And so people live essentially by still interact with nature, but through the agency of the market on one hand and the state on the other hand. Can you think of anything that you take directly from a tree? Okay? Directly from nature? Right. Except for the air we breathe. Today. Is that correct? Except for the air we breathe, we don't take anything directly from nature. Everything comes. And if you are in a place like Hong Kong or Tokyo or Seoul, you will go for a detox. Have a half an hour session with pure oxygen. Yeah? And that will come to the market. That will come to the market. But it is in India, except for the air we breathe, nothing comes directly from nature. Everything comes either through the state or the market. State or the market. This is the change. This is social change to my mind. At least this is how the engineers should look at it. Yes? I don't know about what social scientists will do. And this is how the characteristics are the following. In the very old societies, people did not produce anything. Conservation was essentially by default because there was so much abundantly available and you were so few that no matter how much you hunted, there was still a one more pig available. Yeah? Yeah? But nonetheless, we will say conservation and consumption. There are very nice system dynamic studies of islands in Pacific, where actually people, they call it ritual or a festival every 15 years. The whole community is otherwise vegetarian on that other, but every 15 years they have a festival in which they roast pigs and eat pigs for a week or celebration. Otherwise they are not. Why is that? Because pigs population has increased and has begun to infringe on their environment. Yes? Alright? So they, in order to reduce or contain the population of pigs, they, alright? So you will see the mention of this in thesis by Subaraju. Whereas modern society, every everything is produced and then distributed. And then consumed. Then it is consumed. Earlier people cooked at home, they don't do that anymore. Swiggy. Distribution by Swiggy. Only eat at home, that's all. Nothing else. Okay. Then, in a very old society, social behavior by consensus. People get together, dash it out, and say, "Aisa karenge." Right? Whereas in modern society, social behavior is by laws of market or the state. People don't follow them, that's another matter. But social behavior is supposed to be by laws of the market and bureaucracy and ideology, essentially state laws. Is that fair enough? That's how. And then finally, engineers always define reality. How do engineers define reality? Recall your mathematics. Always x, y, z and t. Space and time. Engineers define very traditional old societies. Time was regarded as cycling. Without an end. Day, night, summer, winter, so on and so forth. It goes on up to yoga and so on and so forth. Is that fair enough? In fact, I know Professor Soni who goes for trekking and then he leaves the civilization and goes up into the mountains for many days. He walks alone and he forgets, is it Thursday or Friday? Cannot remember. You lose concept of time altogether. You're just living, breathing and living. When you're isolated like that. So, time is regarded as endless or cyclic. Strangely, what was the notion of space in very old society? Very finite. I was telling you, don't go too far, you will fall off. Is that right? Land was considered like a tabletop, in which a sort of natural boundary was given to you. And you didn't go very far. And if you did, I was telling him, don't go. He went, never came back. Because he fell off. Is that right? Everybody knows this story? Okay. So, whereas modern societies, time is linear and space is round moving. You always, if you start walking, you will come back where you started. Go around the earth, you will come back where you started. Is that right? Alright? On a very short distance, okay, you will say it's linear. But otherwise, it is round. So, time is regarded as linear and space is round. Space is round. But what it does is, modern societies, people have achievement consciousness. Because time is a habit. Time is an order. There is a yesterday and a tomorrow. Isn't that right? And the tomorrow better be better than yesterday. Isn't that right? That is progress. Is that correct? Without knowing, by saying time is linear, you accepted the notion of progress. Isn't that right? Nobody likes change. How many of you would like to go back to your fourth standard? and you would like to be remain in 4th standard ever. Right? Change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. Yeah? And that is because of the time, which is linear. Linear. And then you get a Pragati Pustak, which says you have been put into the next class. So you have gone one step up. There is progress. Now you may think this is, okay, I will now speak about change in different ways. So let's do this. This was one way of looking at change, and there are others. How do people at the world level look at change? Yeah? And what is the difficulty with it? So for example, at the world level, people look at change in the following way. नहीं, ये चाहिए. How are we doing? Oh, there is no time. Okay, people look at change in population, GDP and all that. You must have seen lots of data of this type. Alright? But I want to draw your attention to just 3 things: population, employment and technology at the moment. So say that, what do we learn from such change data? And what do the change data show? The x-axis is always the time. Population change with time. That's what the purpose is. But these changes are in the system science, you must have been told, changes can be linear, it can be exponential, it can be S-curve, rise and then reach a plateau. It can reach a peak, overshoot and come down. And the final is, this is called the threshold change. You change some variable changes, it suddenly collapses and again picks up. Disasters have this type. Disasters change in this time. Okay, so let's look at that. Get to me. So I'll just show you what the embarrassment is with looking at change in this manner. So let's look at population, for example. So you can see here, what are the years there? Are you able to see? What did I do with that? Oh, here it is. Very weak, I don't know why. It's starting from which year? 18. Huh? Which year is it? X equal to 0 is which time? क्यों ऐसा आता है? 1950, okay. So world population was under 3 billion. And then it just started rising, and I think it's around here, say 2010 or something. It had reached about 6.5 billion. The question is, the trouble with this kind of change is, what would happen next, 20 years from now? Will it be linear? Will it be exponential? Will it be the other 5 types of changes that I showed? And the worst part of it is, when you are here, you don't know what's coming. Nobody knows. So far, world was fairly well endowed, if you like. And you could say, at least for next 10 years, I can say it will linearly change population. 2050, the population could be anywhere between 7 billion and what is that, about 11 billion. That is like monsoon prediction. No good, no good. Alright, so we need something more. Give it that. And then, which is the one I want to see next? Yeah, I'll show you. I'm not talking about technology yet because you wanted something about development and so on and so forth. Alright, so here is something that is, since we have Indo-US Bye-Bye, here is something. Up. This one. This figure shows the employment in different sectors in America. So it shows in about 1850 or so. This is 1750 or so. I don't know what it is. Just check. You can see this line is very few people were involved in information, except for the vicars in the church. There was nobody giving information to anybody. So then industry. How many people in industry? Just about 18% were in industry. One kind or the other. Agriculture, 40% plus were in agriculture in America. And then, what is this? Services. Services about 38%. This was in 1750. Look at the change, how society, American society has changed. For quite some time now, from 1980 onwards, only 2% of the people are in agriculture. 2%. How many are in industry? About 35% in industry. More people in services than in industry. Okay? And look at the information. Computers have done that. Everybody is in information technology. Such a large number. The other day you read about Ashish Nandi, no? He was asked the question, what is the future of India? He said, it will be what Europe is present. This is essentially, it will be an agriculture without cows. European agriculture doesn't have cattle. You never saw. In Europe, people have cattle for meat, not for plowing. Huh? And dairy, sure. And you call dairy agriculture. Okay. Look at the Indian figures in 2007. Services 25%, industry 18.8%, and agriculture about 56%. Hardly couple of percent were in information. Very few people were in information. All these editors and newscasters and all, whatever you want to call it, teachers and all that, in Indian society, yeah, in 2007. What I'm saying is, therefore, what next? Can you tell them anything? Can you look at change like this? Can you learn anything about the future from extrapolation? that's what will happen. And that's what Ashit Mandi did. Okay. And then finally I want to show you technology change. Here it is. To the right a little bit. Right, to the right. To the right. Alright, so you can see, do you see that? Change in computer speed. Going up. How many zeros is that? This was in 2004 or something. Does that mean it will continue? It looks linear, on the log scale at least it looks fairly linear. Is that correct? Alright. Go down a little bit. Go to this figure. Efficiency of energy conversion. Slaves, very poor efficiency. Slaves had very poor efficiency. Something like, we can say, almost down to zero. Little over zero. Then came the new common engine, then came the Watt's engine. James Watt, he produced a condenser, isn't it? To a steam engine, he invented the idea of a condenser so that the steam condenses at the pressure lower than the atmosphere and the efficiency goes up. Okay. Then you had no more steam, you had Otto cycle, the petrol engine, and then you had the diesel engine, and then you had high pressure steam turbine again, yes. So now we are talking about supercritical power plant. What is supercritical? It means the steam will be produced at pressure excess of 220 bar. And 220 bar is considered the critical pressure. Yes? After that, the vapor and the liquid coexist as well. Yes? Right? Then you go to, what is that? Can you hear anything? Look at the efficiency there. Almost 70%. Almost 70%. Go to the right. Have you ever heard of Einstein's speed? Einstein's speed? The suggestion here is nothing can travel at a speed greater than light. Yeah? So you say C is the speed of light divided by the actual speed of your vehicle, C by U, and therefore you can see it is running in the 10 raised to 8, 10 raised to 7. It's a funny way of plotting. So 10 raised to 8 is here. It means very slow speed machine. We have reached about 10 raised to 3 here. So you can see ponies, the horses and all that had a Einstein speed of about, what shall we say, 5 into 10 raised to 7. Trains, all of them use external combustion. This is the speed of sound here. Aircrafts, they all fly at about 400 to 500 kilometers per hour. And then spacecraft. Do you see the Einstein speed here? So these these are all independent things. So what is the next? There will be something even faster. What can you say? What can you say? With electrical vehicles, run faster than petrol vehicles. So I showed you these changes on time, along the time, which is the dominant concept of modern society. All our notions of progress are about time. The question that arises is this change in agriculture from as high as 42% down to 2%, or change in population from as low as 2.5 billion to 7.5 billion, or efficiency going from as low as 2%, 3% to as high as 70%. Are there autonomous things? They are not. That is what makes it difficult to predict. That is what makes it. Linear extrapolations are okay up to 5 years, 10 years. Depends on which phenomenon you are looking at. But really speaking, you cannot predict the future by simply extrapolation, because these are not independent. These are not independent changes. These are not independent changes. Alright, so give me back that. So then, this is where the notion of system dynamics comes in. System dynamics. And I think all of you should possess this book. Limits to growth. Systemic exploration of survival of mankind. Published in 1972. It's a study made at MIT during the 60s. 20 researchers worked for 7 years. And they decided to look at the world in terms of, yeah, exactly what there. Okay, what I'll do is, you switch to the other one. That other. Yeah. Go to the next. Is that more readable? And this is more readable. So they said that, the world can be explained in terms of resources, or wars and other things, fuels and other things, food per capita, industrial output, pollution, and population. And they collected the data for the world. First, for 1900, of resources, food, and so on and so forth. Of course, these are matters of definition. I shared with you something about that. And then, let me show the next slide. See this? Now you can show this. The proposition of system dynamics is that all these so-called population, pollution, food per capita, industrial output, resources, these are not autonomous things. The changes in them are coupled. In fact, the world model is nothing but 5 ordinary differential equations. 5 ordinary differential equations. You can see for the population, for the world as a whole, there is no immigration. So you can say dpop by dt would be birth rate minus death rate. Isn't that right? Simple. It's a conservation law. You do that in fluid mechanics. There is a bucket, there is an inflow and there is an outflow. You change the valves and the level will go up or down. Is that correct? Very mechanistic or fluidistic idea. Right. So, d by dt of pollution, so that's again rate of generation minus rate of mitigation. Is that correct? Isn't that right? Alright. D food per capita by dt is food yield per hectare, that's present productivity, plus any food that you may have stocked from previous years, minus food losses divided by population. That will give you the current value of food per capita. Industrial output, rate of capital investment, minus rate of demand, minus rate of demand of industrial product. Resources, rate of extraction and rate of consumption. The question is, all these things are interconnected. You will say, what has budget got to do with rate of capital investment? That's how we think, huh? But it is indirectly connected. System analysis assumes everything is connected to everything else. Yes? Everything is connected. Nothing happens independently. That is what the previous graph that I showed you convey a wrong idea that these are all independent variables. They are not. They are all interconnected. And they set up these equations of correlation if you like. Some of them were discrete data, some of them could be fitted with continuous functions and so on and so forth. And at time t equal to 0, you knew the value of population, So, quadratic differential equation first order, you only need an initial condition. Eh? So, you give that and let the model run. Let the model run. And that's what they did. They ran it up to 1970. Let's show this. Next. That one. They let the model run, which they call the standard run. And they found that in 1970, there are correlations between the variables. They're so correct that the state of the world in 1970 was correctly predicted. Correctly predicted. Like everything else, you know? If you have predicted something right for 70 years, it must be right for, but at least it is now governed by interdependence. This is not extrapolation. Okay? Are you with me? It's almost like governed by deterministic laws. Is that fair enough? But they are not deterministic, you all know that. So, and they said, see what will happen? From about 2010 to about 2020, 30 or something, world will have a tough time. Industrial output will peak and come down. Food per capita will peak and come down. Population will continue to rise, but then still come down. Pollution will peak and then start coming down. And that's what led to the phrase here, what brought you here won't get you there. American people say that. What brought you here won't get you there. Because all the rising parts of the curve are more or less disappearing. They are either leveling off or now ready to fall. Ready to fall. And that's what led CTARA to write the book. What's the book? Everybody knows? turning point. What is the turning point? Turning point of here. All these are turning points. Turning point. Which means you cannot recreate where you came from. Right? There will be disconnect. May not be abrupt, but gradual. At least the model, system language model always predicts gradual changes. Yeah? Although reality in somewhere, it may be abrupt. Yeah? Alright. So now once you have this kind of model, you've got a tool. And second thing is you are not willing to accept that the end of the world will come in 2100. After all, we are intelligent people. People always say, oh, our scientists will find an answer. It's almost like religious faith, huh? And people say, scientists will find an answer. Resources. Is that correct? This is the language you see now in all the unga and all this single-use plastic. All this is what there are people are now. People are not willing to accept that there is climate change. But at the same time, evidence was being generated where they said, if you stop doing what you were doing, you can recover the climate. What is a very good example of that? Anybody? Yeah? Freon? It was extensively used in refrigeration and air conditioning industry. People were not willing to accept that freon was causing ozone depletion. They used to say, ozone to upar hai, itna upar hai, such a low pressure, such a low temperature, how can any reaction take place? We had a professor who got the Nobel Prize for that, Professor Wilkinson. In PC Saxena, he gave a seminar on what a terrible time he had. He had great opposition from American multinational companies, DuPonts, who produce freons. They were preventing any money to be given to him for showing that reaction takes place at low pressure. Ultimately, NSF agreed, gave him money, but they said you cannot employ an American Ph.D. student. So he got a student from Mexico to do research at the University of Southern California. And he created a zero gravity box in which freon and ozone they react. He showed that actually yes, ozone does deplete at low pressure and low temperature, which he had shown clearly. But you are not allowed to prove it in a lab for good 10 years. The most important thing, once ban was imposed, you know, on the southern hemisphere there was a big black hole. It was very big, and over a 10-year period, people have been filming it from Australia, and it is shrinking. If you stop doing something which you already done, you can reverse. Otherwise, if you do business as usual, end is in 2100. Is that right? Okay. So, we'll start using single-use plastic. So people started, that is too drastic. Nobody likes to say no to anything. ये नहीं करना, वो नहीं करना. We all resist, no? You want the shopkeeper to give you everything in a plastic bag. Same thing everywhere. I remember CTARA, the environment minister, he had this, he was very against SUVs because they are guzzlers. So he said, at a petrol station, if an SUV comes, you charge him at a higher rate than if a Maruti comes. Yes. Can it be done? Cannot be done like that. So, ये नहीं करने का, वो नहीं करने का, people don't like that. Runs against the notions of freedom and so on. I've used the word freedom. Later I have used the word independence. Yeah? And clarify what the difference is. Yeah? Okay? So, people started proposing strategies. Because in the model you can do anything, no? In reality it is difficult, but in the model you can do anything. So people said, we will get low-grade ores. Even if we have to dig, go to the 6 miles below the sea, we get oil from there. And so on and so on. Yeah? So, then what will happen? And we will use nuclear energy. Then what will happen? Yes, resources will be available longer, much more than what are there here. Food per capita will rise. Population will rise also. Population will stabilize much more because we all know more higher standard of living means less people, yeah, and that's the general rule. And then you have industrial output, which is going from there, will rise. So look at what has happened to pollution. This scenario will give you food, will give you more industrial output, and so on. So the world will be limited by pollution. That's the pollution. If you go way above pollution levels here, because there is such a huge amount of industrial activity, so much fertilizers used and so on and so forth, that many people say, sir, why is population going down? Because so you can see, and the main thing is pollution is also going down. Pollution is also going down. That is because there is nobody left to pollute. Yeah, all right. And then there is one group of members in the MIT team was much more like our Vandana Shiva. She believes in organic and so on and so forth. Yeah? And they said, we want to run a model in which we say the whole world agrees that the industrial output of the world will be restricted to 1975 level by consensus among the world leaders. If somebody is producing more and he can transfer it to another country which is producing less, that's another matter. But for the world as a whole, the industrial output will be kept constant at 1975 level. Then see what happens. Because resources will last much more. Food per capita will rise. Industrial output will stabilize to this level, 75 level. Population will be less than this, and pollution will be almost negligible. the main culprit, according to the world model, is industrial output. If you believe this, if you believe this. If you believe this. Alright, so, just a minute. Incidentally, I said all these variables are interconnected. In a system dynamics model, they look like this. Yeah? This is what it looks like. But this is how dependencies are. Yeah? The birth rate is related to food availability and so on, like that. All the connections are shown. All the connections are shown. It takes a lot of time for one to read through these things. The book which describes limits to growth, world model, is about 600 pages long. It's there in our library. But I suggest if you want to just understand the curves that I showed you, look at the book. Technology with the Human Face. Done. In that you will see those figures and several more strategies. I have only shown you 2 strategies, but there are several more strategies. People have doubted. There is a professor in University of Melbourne. You can Google that. In 2005, he published a book where he studied the real changes between 1970 and 2000. But for a minor shift of a couple of years here and there, the business as usual was reproduced. Business as usual model was reproduced. Both for pollution, industrial output and so on. Can we now show world OV? Have you got mobile phones? Look at worldometer.com. Picometer of the world. Oh, real time. जरा पुढे जाना चाहिए कंप्यूटर सीखे थे ना that I can number of births and all. This is about the population. This is about population. Government and economic, number of public health expenditure. Public education expenditure. I कभी बढ़ने वाला है. cars have been produced this year so far. So last year on 31st December, 86 million cars were produced. I don't know where we are going now, maybe a little less. Number of bicycles, look at that. 112 million bicycles. And then computers. Next. Society and media. Society and media. Huh? Go next. It has number of species lost. आगे जाओ. धीरे. Society and all that. Number of books, number of newspapers. Number of emails sent. Look at that. Number of emails sent. By the way, every time you click a mouse, you are sending CO2 on. So there is a current flowing. Yeah. So this energy. You are sending CO2 off. Alright. Then we put tweets per day. Google searches. Adhan pade data. Environment. Forest lost this year. Hectares. Land lost to soil erosion. CO2 emissions this year. Desertification and toxic chemical release. I think with this bulls will go down. Okay. Next. Food. Dekho. Undernourished people, we do nutrition, no? Undernourished people in the world. Look at that. They're moving very slowly. Alright, so overweight people and obese people in the world. How do you like that? I remember America is a very explicit country, you know. In 2007 I was in America and this is taken Stanford paper or newspaper that time. Headline: 33.5% of American population is obese. And this was certified by All India Institute of Medical Science, that's the equivalent man of that. Average food consumption in America is 3,000 kilograms per. Next. Alright, next. What does it say? Obese people people who died of hunger. Money spent on obesity related things, all that. Water. We work in water area. Krishna. Is that developed? Energy use आगे जाओ from non-renewable आगे solar energy falling on the earth और आगे health I think now you can see it for yourself. I won't spend more time. So I have taken you through change in variety of ways. Yes, variety of ways. Tabulated change against time. System dynamic change, which is governed by some law. In fact, the correlations that you develop between the variables, in fact, you've written the law of society. Is that right? However, direct or indirect, if you establish the correlation between birth rate and food per capita, that's the law of the society. Like that, the entire world model, the right hand side is the law of the society. Is that fair enough? Right? So, we, in our humble ways in 1990, one of the good things about system dynamics, it works very well in a closed system. And go already is a nice closed system. So we looked at a remote village, unconnected by road, electricity, postal service, nothing. They were just tribal people. And we asked ourselves, what will happen to this village in the 100 years if appropriate technologies were implemented in that village? I'm not going to show you because the time is running out. I won't show you that. But there is a Ph.D. thesis by Subaraju. It's there in our library. Have a look at it. And you will see what happens to human carrying capacity, animal carrying capacity, land fertility, and so on and so forth. Because everybody says, no, biogas hona hi chahiye. Check dams banna hi chahiye. Improved cook stores hona hi chahiye. Do you agree? A forest is a must. Hona hi chahiye. There are only 24 hours in a day. And there are so many people in a village. Is that right? Right? The question that, research question that we ask is about what should we do first? Should I interact with villagers and convince them, build the biogas plant? Before you do anything else, build the biogas plant. Choice of technology, but in a different way. We are prioritizing to see how will it affect the carrying capacity of the village. Because we said village plus its ecosystem, because it was living on ecosystem. Forests and mountains surrounding it. That's all it was. I think you go to a village, valley में Amle is very much like that. It's in a valley. Essentially, people live by interact with nature, 100% almost. And for till very recently, I think there was no postal service or anything like that. People had to go a fair distance. So, what should you do first? Should you build a check dam first? Should you build a biogas plant first? Such research questions can be asked using system dynamics in rural development. Yes? What about next? I think I won't discuss any technology development project now. Just go further. Go to this. Forget away. I think you can see it on your mobile telephones. So, yeah, go further. So this is the slide. If you look at literature on development, so you wanted to know what the social scientists think this is what development is all about. GDP, income distribution, balance of payment, literacy rate, health, life expectancy at birth, employment, environment, empowerment, and so on and so forth. Is that right? And then they have indices for all this. Is that right? This is what social scientists do. And then they do aggregation, weighted average, to come up with human development index. But then there is another Unga session in which people say, no, you must have gender development index. So, because there are many countries, like Middle Eastern countries, which were high ranking, but women had no voting right. So then they said, women are less developed there than men, so we want a proper representation. Have you heard of human development index and gender development index? If you look at Economic and Political Weekly, you will see these. But at the level of people, what does development mean? Yes? Basically, I do the alata. Was milk delivered or not? Is that right? Right. Then, what does it say here? Community life. Go and do chit chat, whatever. And then family, social mobility, participation, dignity, and creativity. This is what matters to ordinary people. At the level of people, development means this. Northern India people say, "Kya hai?" And after in Marathi, something else. But for appropriate technology, we say development is change. And change is of three types: supplementary change, complementary change, and substitutional change. In desirable direction and at desirable rate. Desirable क्या है मेरे को मालूम है तुमको भी मालूम है. But we say first of all we have this qualifier. Is that fair? Next slide. Oh, next slide. Here it is. I always like this example. This technology of home cleaning. Is that right? Broom, jadu. Is that right? In the earlier days, you had just a straw tied with a string. Is that right? So the string used to get wet and would therefore was replaced with rubber and alcohol. Is that correct? And in some cases, even galvanized iron wire. Is that right? The grip. What would you call them? And then later on, the handle was covered with a galvanized iron sheet. And even further, an extruded sleeve of plastic. Is that fair enough? But no change in basic design. Okay? It's still the old jadu. Okay? Then some people came up and said this. Shopkeepers do many things. Huh? The first thing they do is to put jadu in a plastic cover. People buy it then. And I remember the shopkeeper here, he even tied to it the scoop, the plastic scoop, to every jadu. Okay? Yeah. Alright. So many people had only cardboard or a newspaper to pick up kachra. So this is the thing. I call that complementary change. So the jadu will continue to work even if it was not there, but it is there, good, it's a pushes, it's complements. Yes? Alright? Then these were supplementary changes. But then somebody got the idea He did something because it could be done. He produced a plastic brush, the brush into a jadoo. Brush into a jadoo. I call that substitutional change. The material basis of it has changed. And then you have this. This is called vacuum cleaner. This I call super substitutional change. Super substitution change. For home cleaning, home cleaning. How many people have a vacuum cleaner at home? Oh, be honest. How many people have a home? Yeah, you have. Anybody else? Vacuum cleaner at home? I कधी वापरला? वर्षातनं किती वेळा वापरला? How often do you use it? तो माले पर पड़ता है ना? Educated है। अभी appropriate टिका नहीं पड़ा? That is anti-peak. This is the basic argument of the leftists always have been. When you import Western technology, they are so highly productive. But either you don't have demand for its output, or you have underutilization of capacity. All union workers would, isn't that right? So, underutilization of capacity is, flogging thing for union, trade unions particularly. Because when you have so much, you are paying so much on the interest itself on the machines, and therefore you reduce the labor. And then you find that it is not worth running the machine every day of the week. Such a common story in an industry after industry after industry. Right. So, always ask what happens to society when such changes occur. Recognize the forward and backward linkage. You see, when this jadoo was there, that is, you were taking something from nature. When these things happen, you are taking everything from oil refinery. Is that right? The material basis changes, and therefore the social basis changes. Is that correct? Right? Then how can the alternative be judged? By a common set of criteria. Now I am going to give you a little quiz. These are alternatives. Put them on a shelf. Put them all on a shelf. Assume you have a 600 square feet flat. Compare the alternatives, like I did paper making, in terms of criteria. Multiples, some social criteria, some cost would be the simplest. Yeah, that's the most unifying thing. Is that right? So you can go as long as you want. Replacement time which will list out the criteria with which you would like to compare these by saying, if I were a society, if I were a me, something else. But if I were a society, How would I judge the alternatives? That's the question. Yeah? So you will do multi-criteria analysis. Now in the appropriate technology class, we do teach a formal method for doing this. It's called analytic hierarchy process. Yes? Alright. So then it will tell you, are the changes development promoting or development retarding? Many states have found that when the grasses disappear, people have no employment and people migrate to cities. Yeah? Very common story, very common story. And that's why Madhya Pradesh government had built several ponds, check dams and ponds. We brought back a lot of migrants from Punjab and Haryana and so on and so forth back to Madhya Pradesh. Because grasses were there with which they could do something. Then, how should modern technology be used in a low capital level? I already told you, not on a MRI. Okay. Observation and articulation of change is the main requirement for understanding appropriate technology. You must be able to observe change and articulate it. Also look at other environmental costs and so on and so forth. Transport costs, other things. Because these are the externalities that impinge on the nature. That impinge on the nature. What could be done? That's what people used to say, you know. That's why I take people to Parle Biscuit Factory, but I take people to Parle Biscuit Factory. Yeah? 28 tons per day of biscuits, employing 10 people. And of course, you can't eat 28 tons in the neighborhood. You send them to long distances. And students see that when they go to the factory, they see these trucks being loaded with boxes on which Chennai, Nagpur written on it, because these trucks will be going. So Samruddhi Marg will have these silly biscuits going and mango bites going from. Is that true? Alright, so next. Oh yeah, this is paper making, alright, that's another one. But you can see this, what I mean by multi-criteria. So you can see this is the Khadi and Village Industries Commission plant, 240 kg. This is 5 tons per day paper plant, which is a medium scale. And this is the 100 tons per day paper plant in Jabalpur. And you see the big plants require bamboo and hardwoods, which are obtained from jungles. In India, paper making factories do not have forests of their own. They cut forests of the government. In America, New York Times has 110 pages every day. उनका कितना लगता होगा? New York Times has a forest for production of paper. They plant trees to produce paper. Yeah? They don't impinge on the government, they impinge. Alright, but you can see there are some intrinsic requirements in technology, like water requirement, 18,000 liters, gallons, 400,000, yeah, 8 million gallons. When you have a paper factory which requires 8 million gallons of water per day, nothing less than a 6-foot diameter pipe will do, né? Because you won't get from your bore well so much water. You'll have to create a special pond next somewhere, dam something, and then bring water. Alright. Then you can see machinery required, transport required, effect on environment. This is very scattered and therefore small, scattered and small, but this would be concentrated and large. Very famous study by Madhav Gadgil, in which the sheep drank water from a river, in which pollutants from a paper factory near Belgaum were released, and the Dhangar Samaj found that the sheep had lost all its wool. Very famous study by Madhav Gadgil and collaborator कौन? मिश्रा ने? हाँ? नहीं? Not Indian name. Gadgil and Mishra or Mehra? Gadgil and Mehra in this study. So you found the sheep had lost all the wool because the sheep drank water from the river. Yeah? So it can be next. Alright, so what are the criteria and aptitude for appropriate technology? Here it is simple, very simple. Preference for capital saving rather than labor reducing technologies, basically simple technology. Preference for technologies that gradually upgrade rather than displace skills of traditional engineers. Preference for waste utilizing and resource conserving technologies. To reduce infrastructure and other dependency. You don't want 6 inches pipeline running. And you don't want fiber optic cables running under your. Alright. Preference for regional resource production consumption linkages rather than improved import-export dependencies. Essentially decentralization. At this point I must tell you about Professor P.L. of IIT Delhi. Anybody know? Professor Dhar of IIT Delhi? He has written a book, 2096. He always tells me to share it with 2095. It's a fiction. It's a fiction written by an engineer. Okay? And I'm mentioning this because we recently had one graph. And it says that in 2030 or some 33 or 39, the Director General of United Nations, Secretary General of United Nations is a Chinese gentleman by name Zhu, and he was meeting of world leaders in Delhi, in Vigyan Bhavan, in 2030 plus. And he locks them up for 3 days. No secretary, nothing. They live there, eat there, 3 days. And he brainwashed them. And he extracted a commitment from them, saying that from 2060 onwards, all imports and exports between countries will be banned. look after within your boundaries, look after yourself. No imports and everything. I think flights are banned much earlier than that because they are the biggest contributor to CO2. The funniest part is there is a chapter on what follows when this announcement is made. And he goes to an IIT and talks to students, talks to faculty. Because their children are abroad, they are here. Students are saying, doesn't it never go to America? Turning point. What brought you here won't get you there. Yeah? That is change. This, by the way, is a 4-point thing by Anil. I have added my little bit to it, and I said, doctors are coming, but no. Engineers are like doctors of society. But doctors have the advantage that the drugs they prescribe are at least tested on phantoms. Cats, dogs, उसको मार भी देते हैं. At least engineers don't have a phantom society. ऐसा है क्या कोई island where there are monkeys and you give them laptop and observe क्या करते हैं तुम. And if you behave properly, you will adopt laptop. Otherwise not. Let me tell you, we are so much dependent on imported technology. Our patents are sitting in America. Observe American society, observe European society. You will get a very different picture from what you read. I'll leave you with just one thought. Just 2 months ago, United Kingdom as a cabinet minister. What is the cabinet minister? Special portfolio. Minister for loneliness. Did you read about that? Did you read? Can you have a minister for loneliness? Western society has promoted individualism to such an extent. Of course, marriage. When they marry in America, they first settle. जब भी divorce होगा तभी किसको कितना मिलेगा? Then they marry, right? In America. So now they are worried about loneliness in UK. Cabinet minister for loneliness. Can you believe it? हम तो इधर न्यूट्रिशन की बात कर रहे हैं. Methodology for appropriate technology: identify the felony, specify the surrounding condition so as to determine the level of selectivity of people associated with the need, and also determine the relevant situations, limit situations, so far and no further. Yeah. In every situation you have limit situations. So convert the need into solvable technological problems. Scan the spectrum of technical solutions available. Choose from the spectrum or innovate a new technical solution. Practice macro diffusion. Learn from it and then scale up or whatever. Yeah? most favorite example. This is my most favorite example. I said technology is about an activity. So my activity is pouring water from a matka into a glass. Isn't that simple? One way to do it is to lift the whole matka. Who will do that? I think apes will do that. Okay. Dipping. I remember in Ahmedabad, in my childhood, we used to play in the hot sun. And when one inning was over, everybody would be very, very thirsty. And we'll end up into somebody's house. And in those days, they used to have matkas with one glass on top. And everybody would jump at that one glass, go right in, drink water, give the same glass to the next man, who will again do it. I remember we used to educate our mothers. Anybody understand Gujarati here? You understand? Friend no glass echo na thayo. बरोबर है ना? मित्रा का ग्लास पुष्टा होत नहीं. कन्नड़ में कैसे बोलेंगे? बोला ना? बंगाली में कैसा? अन्य होगी सर. ताकि चर्चा का विषय है. So much for hygiene, and so on and so forth, because we are all environmentalists. And then there is this one, where you had a scoop. I saw this one on Patna railway station. There was a man with 3 or 4 matkas like that. He had red cloth around them. And the matka had a spout sort of thing coming out, and he would put a wooden datta on and it was covered with cloth. But still the water would keep dripping all the time. And then when somebody came, he would pull the datta out, and there was a big jet issue. Reminded of second year fluid mechanics, isn't that? Trajectory of a jet. So, and you would hold the glass there. Yes. And then of course you have the modern potter who puts a tap onto a matka. It can be a metal tap or a plastic tap. You know, plastic and metal don't take to mud. You can't just fix it and leave it there. What is done is, you need cement from inside and outside, cement powder. And in fact, I have seen potters who would use, mungia ghar banata hai. Anthill. Are you familiar with anthill? You know, what ants do is they pick up the most clayey particles to build their house, to build their home. So some potters actually use that clay, mix it with cement and put it around. Okay? Cement is nanotechnology. Isn't that right? What is the find out particle size of cement? Would it qualify for nano? Yes. Huh? Find out. Okay. All right. And then you have our friend here. Thing is, this and this require the pot has to be open. There is always a danger if you leak over. So then you can have a tube, which is exaggerated, but tube with a non-written valve there on the inside, and kapda dhone ka clip on the tube, and you fill it up with water, and as long as your glass is below the surface of the water, no water will flow into the glass. That is one characteristic of science. It mystifies. You talk to a man on the street, you say, "Pani kaisa hai?" You won't understand. You won't understand, right? The principle of a cycle. Is it easy to understand? चोर लोग को सब समझ में वो पेट्रोल निकालते हैं ये टेक्नोलॉजी Can it be used for water? Plastic, rubber tube, plastic tube, and mud, but no poking anywhere. So it's a very safe technology. I have made a comment there. What could be the next innovation that will be modern, scientific, as well as sustainable? We need multi-criteria evaluation to make the choice. What would be next? You had organic jhadu followed by plastic ka jhadu, plastic followed by super substitution, vacuum cleaner. What would be next? Right? Lapda kar rahe. You know what? Just put the glass there, water will come. What is that? You need a solenoid. Next, it requires a solenoid valve, which will, I first saw it in a toilet. But 5-star hotel, bathroom मध्ये गेलो तिथे वॉश बेसिन मध्ये हात घातला की पाणी. It was amazing. There was nothing to open it. This is what science-based technologies are. One has been mastered by a chore, the other one is being used in a problem. But it will really work. You will get new sophisticated market. You have water. For many years now, I have shown this example to people who have undergone an appropriate technology course and people who have not undergone an appropriate technology. Which one do you think the people who have undergone a course rank the highest? You must recall all your commitments to environment, to whatever. ये आज का क्विज है. मेटलर्जी के स्टूडेंट्स, कंप्यूटर साइंस के स्टूडेंट्स सब होते थे हमारे क्लास में. Which one would you recommend? Those who are undergone the course, they recommend that. Those who have not undergone the course, they recommend that. And it mystifies you. It shows I am different from man on the street. If you get a question, you don't want to. Just go to the last slide of this. We'll stop on a hopeful note. There's plenty to do. The sky is the limit. But next. Say next. But we must choose. Yeah? Rather than next. Rather than a cloudy sky with the illusion of silver lining. Are you making choices? Which are sort of saying illusion. People say hydrocarbon से कार नहीं अच्छा नहीं है, हाइड्रोजन का. उससे भी कोई लोगों को निमोनिया होगा. They will be inhaling steam all the time. Was it then? If the concentration of cars is too much. Funny, at the moment, the world as a whole is enjoying riding cars where they are polluting with high efficiency cars. People have a satisfaction of polluting with a high efficiency car. Because the rate at which the efficiency is improved and the rate at which the number of cars and the passenger miles are improved. I mean, if I improve the efficiency by 1%, but if my passenger miles go up and my number of cars go up, then there is something called CO2. वो तो accumulate होता है. He does not scale with this. Is that right? So the net, you should read forget the name of an American professor who argues on this on many technologies, cement production, cars and many other things, where he shows that the developed world is enjoying today is polluting with high efficiency technologies. High efficiency technologies. But many of the new things have to replace the old things. You hear about so many electrical conductors. Now you can have electrical conductivity can be reduced resistance can be reduced by almost factor of 10. But the existing wires have to be pulled down and these new wires have to be established. What is the cost? Like the cost and so on and so forth. People are saying people are enjoying having good rights, enjoying polluting with high efficiency technology. I think the anti-technology view is much stronger in Europe and America than we have even sensed it here. Very strong. Very. It has been so for the last 30 years, 40 years almost. And many of the movements have been of that type. Yes? So, they have protested against Nobel laureates and so on and so forth. Whose work has meant more and more and more damage to them. Thank you for listening to me for so long. I'll stop here. If you don't mind, we can go across the road and have a cup of tea.
Thank you so much, sir. We are so out of time, so there are no question and answer sessions.
Out of time?
Exceeded the time.
Hugely exceeded, I know.
So,
I should have read it.
I would like to invite Professor Agnihotri to present the memento. So that's the same.
Momento कशाला? मग काही नकोय.
It's my sweet revenge.
मला तुम्ही चान्स दिला एवढं बोलायचा. कोण देतंय बाबा मला बोलायला?
It's my sweet revenge to give you the memento. I remember in 2010 there was a 25 years of CTARA workshop. I attended it for 2 days full, taking Shukti. Spoke probably and I should have spoken. 15 days later, Uday Gaitonde says, "Arey, date tula hote." So I went, I said, "Sir, I believe you are looking for me."
Yes.
"Kai chal raha hai?" I said, "No, I am here, DG shipping." "No, te malai mein." "What are you doing in bureaucracy?" So I said, "नौकरी कर रहा हूँ." आता बास झालं, resign करा आणि या आता. As a seasoned, I told him, "Sir, 46 over झाले, 4 over बाकी आहेत, ते कळून येतो." And he kept track. वो 4 over कब खत्म होते हैं. So that's why I'm saying it's my sweet revenge to give you a memento.
He spoke on what? Poor are still poor. Those circuit पर काही नाही, CCTV नाही ना? Okay, thank you very much.